Actually, it just got resolved just like that. So,
So we just smile and face the camera.
you don't have to smile, but that'd be kind of nice. So, it's up to you. Um,
Can you tell us when people can start seeing us? Is that when as soon as your voice comes on in the background?
and they should be seeing us right now. So, I started the live stream. So, we have like, normally we start a little bit earlier, but since we do the StreamYard, it's a little bit different. So, yeah, there you are. You're live on Cimpatico right now, and they can hear us. So, but
Awesome.
we're going to start the official episode right now. And so, like I said, it'll be about a minute of us just kind of being awkwardly silent, but I will see you guys on the other side.
Cool.
Okay.
Hey adapters, I'm Doug Parsons. I'm a partner at Cimpatico Studios where we live stream conversations about complex business and social challenges with professionals like yourself who are working on the same issues. Our shows are live streamed in front of a global audience of your professional peers on Cimpatico.tv. I'm building a new type of online community for professionals like yourself on the Climate Adaptation channel. If you're a regular listener of my America Adapts podcast, I think you'll find that we're taking our conversations about important problems, policies, and solutions to the next level here. And if you're interested in being a guest, we'd love to hear from you. And now join us for this latest episode.
Hey, adapters, welcome back. Today, streaming in from the United Kingdom, our guests are Michael Cunningham and Michelle Kent from the organization Nine Trees. Michael has worked in the conservation and the wildlife sector for many years, and he's had a varied career spanning across business, tourism, and the arts. Michelle studied environmental science and has worked in ecology, woodland, and habitat management for over 10 years. Both will share how woodland restoration and conservation can tackle climate change and at the same time support local wildlife, promote biodiversity, and create jobs within the countryside sector. They introduce us to their organization Nine Trees that works to conserve and manage the woodlands in the United Kingdom. Hey guys, welcome to the show.
Hey.
Hi, Doug. Hiya.
All
Thank you
right.
very much for having us on.
For sure. Looking forward to this conversation, and I appreciate you guys, sticking around there, coming, streaming in from the United Kingdom. Well, let's just kick this right off. So, Michael, can you give us a really brief overview of Nine Trees, and then we'll talk a little bit more details about it later. But just what is Nine Trees?
Yeah, so basically, Nine Trees is a not-for-profit organisation, and we plan to plant hundreds of thousands of trees over the coming years. It's based on a subscription, and we want to plant 9 trees per person per year for everyone in the UK. And I started Nine Trees because I wanted to make a difference on a national level for generations to come, leaving a legacy to be proud of.
All right. Well, fantastic. And Michelle, so you joined Nine Trees. Can you give us a little bit of history how you ended up joining Michael and doing this?
Yeah, so Mike asked me to join Nine Trees when we were out doing some woodland management. I asked him to help me with a coppicing job, and he talked to me about this idea that he had, and I really liked it. So I jumped on board and started Nine Trees with him in sort of May 2019.
All right. So, Mike, I can call you Mike, right? I've just been calling you
Yep.
Michael. Okay, good. Nine trees. I mean, explain the number. All right. In this notion, every year there's nine trees. Let's say it's someone's two when someone starts it, and that could be a lifelong commitment. So why nine?
Well, it's quite hard for people to think about things on a massive scale, and your impact on the planet and the environment. And people usually kind of come to terms with the fact of, in their 20s or 30s. And if you suddenly realize then you've got to plant 300 trees, it's really hard for you to find that land and either buy the land or know how to plant trees and then know how to manage them until for 50 years or 100 years. So we just set it up so easily that you only have to plant 9 trees per year, because the average person emits 9 tons of carbon dioxide a year, and that's in the UK. If you're basing it on different countries, in America it's a lot more, and in certain third world countries it's a lot less. So in the UK, we're calling it 9 trees.
Oh, very cool, very cool. Michelle, so this is carbon sequestration, but you guys are also very interested in promoting biodiversity and ecological restoration. Can you give us some background on that?
Yeah, so it's not as sort of straightforward as, sort of planting a tree. So it's sort of it's about everything else that goes on with it. So if we haven't got the biodiversity to go with the woodland, then there's not really much point in us, sort of, as a human species, sort of still being here if we haven't got all of the nature and everything else going around us. So the focus is on the nature and biodiversity, what trees we plant, and then that feeds into the carbon that's stored within the woodland.
All right. So, Mike, maybe you could just elaborate on that. When, biodiversity, people can look at that in very different ways. Let's say you're in the rainforest in the Amazon. Biodiversity, you think it's intact to a certain extent if it's an intact rainforest. In the United States, less so. But the United Kingdom has a long history of human settlement. How do you guys approach biodiversity?
Well, luckily we do still retain a high level of biodiversity in the UK, but Europe as a massive landmass has a lot more. So we need to create habitat and reclaim it from maybe farmland or building sites, and create woodland to enable more wildlife to survive. And a higher diversity of wildlife can survive if those habitats are connected through hedgerows, through shelter belts, through new woodlands. And then slowly but surely, more wildlife and nature can live in a setting that is bigger. It's quite easy for links to be broken.
And Michelle, your own experiences with restoration, do you have those conversations? Do you talk to scientists? Like when you're saying we want to restore this particular plot and we want to factor in sort of like historic, trees that are native to these areas, do you have those kind of conversations? Because you could look at different points in your ecological history and say, well, we're going to do it based on this, or we're going to go back even farther. What are those kind of conversations like?
Yeah, so I suppose you can, some sort of conservation restoration will go back quite far in terms of what the landscape used to look like. The way that we are approaching it is we're using experts within the woodland sort of management sort of area, and we're asking them what trees need to be planted within that local area. But we're also looking at and having conversations with people around and looking at the research that's in place for which trees will survive sort of long term, taking into consideration how the climate is predicted to change. So it's sort of trying to future proof things, but also trying to get a good mix of local sort of tree species into each site.
All right, and Mike, let's talk about some of your first projects. You'd mentioned, is it Franklin Woods? Is that one of your first projects? Could you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so at each site, we talk to the landowners and find out if they've got any connections with history or culture in that area, or maybe wildlife. So one's called Tawny Wood because there's an owl at the bottom of an old tree that is the remnants of a big woodland. And the other site that we've got, first one actually, is called Franklin Wood. That was basically based on the fact that a guy called Hugh Meredith emigrated to Pennsylvania, and he befriended Benjamin Franklin, and he just happened to be in the printing trade, and they established a printing house together. So basically, after that, a couple of years later, they were helping Franklin promote his political ambitions and idealism. So basically, that's why we call it Franklin Wood, because it's a link to the ancestor Hugh Meredith, who used to live there, and it helped to found the American Constitution. So we think it's quite important. And so even though it's in Wales, it's not based on a Welsh name or an animal, but based on the name Franklin because of Benjamin Franklin.
Love it. Fantastic. Well, I want to hear a little bit more. So what's at Franklin Woods? What kind of trees and, what kind of biodiversity are you seeing showing up there now that you've done some of the plantings?
Yes, we've we went back in August to have a walkthrough over the site. So we've got a mix of tree species going from with the long-term aim is that the woodland will be an oak woodland, because that's what historically and long-term, that's what would be in Wales, is the main sort of key sort of species. But oaks take a long time to grow, so we've got a mix of species that so we've got little bits of sort of hazel and birch and my mind's gone blank.
Well, Mike, you want to jump in?
I do know all the trees.
Some rowan and there's some willow as well.
Yeah.
And we've got a scrubby area as well that will be really good for animals as it slowly regenerates over time. So we've got a good mix there, and that's all to do with biodiversity as well, not just having a monoculture crop, that we try and get, like Michelle was saying, historically what would have been there, and also a good mix of seed, so that in the future it'll be a diverse woodland, being able to host a diverse array of animals and wildlife.
All right, Mike. Maybe Michelle, did you want to add?
I was gonna add. Yeah, we've fenced the area that we've planted off, so it's now not under sort of any sort of grazing. So which is over the summer, that's allowed the grasses and wildflowers to actually establish and to grow up, which wouldn't normally happen on that part of the farm. It would always have been grazed or cut quite early on in the summer. So actually, although we've got trees on site, we've already seen an increase in sort of the biodiversity, because it's allowed a safe area for sort of insects to thrive, for the wildflowers to come up, and there's even oak saplings coming up sort of naturally, because they've not been eaten or cut as the hay's been taken.
Excellent. What about, Mike, and maybe you could explain that in the United States, lots of public land, but of course there's plenty of private land, and when you're doing tree restoration, you have to factor in long-term things like, all right, we are going to plan on this 50 hectares of land, but how do you know in 10, 30, 50 years someone doesn't sell that land and, there's trees that are going to be protected? Is what you're doing focused more on public land? How does that work when you actually identify a plot of land to do this on?
Yes, so we work with the landowners, be they private landowners or an organisation or even a council, and we put into place like a licence kind of agreement for 50 years that will safeguard our trees. So we take over the management of that plot of land, and that could be from half an acre to 10, 20 acres, and even more if people want to support us in that way. So they're kind of altruistic landowners, and we speak to them very much on a one-to-one basis before we even sign anything, ensuring that they don't want to grow the wood for firewood, or they don't want to grow it to sell for carbon credits, or they won't cut it down in 25 years, or they won't be thinking of selling the land. And that if they do ever think of selling the land because of like family matters or money matters or possibly deaths in the family, that we are basically given first right to either buy the land, or that it's in the next owner, our management plans are given over to them and asked that they sign up to us. So we're trying as best we can to ensure that we have grown trees for 50 years, and that will sequester the 9 tons of carbon per 9 trees after that time.
Okay, and so when it comes to the carbon sequestration, maybe Michelle, you could answer this. It's that, sometimes our markets for carbon are really not great in the United States, but where you're at, if you're saying you're doing X number of trees and you expect this much carbon to be sequestered, are you part of any government system where they're paying you because of that carbon sequestration, or do you even get into that? It's just it's an honor system. How do you work?
Yeah, so we've looked at the being verified as a carbon, sort of selling carbon credits, and how that works. We don't really want to go down that route. It's we want to. The initial idea that Mike had about 9 trees is about individual people being able to do something and get sort of trees planted. So instead of being verified, what we're doing is we have mimicked, and we're making our own sort of system so that we're transparent and accountable. And that's why we have the trees geolocated, and we have these agreements in place to safeguard the site and the land. And we will do the tests sort of needed to show that the soil is storing carbon, that the trees are storing carbon. But we don't really want to go down the carbon credits sort of route. Whether we sort of fully agree with that or not, we have our own thing set up, and we want to pursue what we've done with what we've got with 9 trees.
All right, and Mike, so let's say, like, how much have you planted so far, and what is your ambition? You must have a sort of a strategic plan. It's like, all right, we want to plant half of the United Kingdom, and that's just throwing out a number there. But you must have sort of like these aspirational goals. What are those?
Yeah, well, currently the woodland in the UK is about 11%, whereas in Europe it's more like 13 or more. And really, we'd love to get up to 30% wooded. That would be great for wildlife and biodiversity, but our aims are not on that kind of, even though we're a national organisation, our aims are basically to plant 9 trees per person for as many people as can be subscribers. And we're aiming really for 100,000 trees in the next 2 years. And then every year thereafter, it will be at least 100,000 trees with 10,000 subscribers. So hopefully we'll be planting millions of trees in 2023 or 2024. But we're a small organisation, and as time goes on, we'll expand our team as much as we need to plant as many trees as we can. So really, it's about educating people and explaining to them that, you know, we do need 9 trees. You can't just plant 1 tree 5 years ago, and that it costs this much money, because actually we're creating jobs in the sector. We're not just sending our money to a different country where we don't know if the trees have actually been planted or if they're being looked after. And so our aspirations are more about education and people being involved and really owning up to that, their carbon footprint. And through that, hopefully reducing the carbon footprint, but also realizing the 30, 60 years damage they might have already done, and continue to subscribe to us and tell their friends and family and businesses and that they can too. So our aspirations are growing as we speak, but hopefully we'll be planting in Europe as well. We've got a French company who are really wanting to offset with us. So we might be finding some land in France in the not too distant future.
Well, I don't know if you follow, but I think it's E.O. Wilson. He's just an ecologist, but he has this 50% nature, you know, the entire world. Mm-hmm. And you're obviously, you know, focusing in a certain area, but you're probably part of that conversation. Do you ever try to kind of connect with those kind of larger initiatives? Now, Michelle, do you want to take a crack at that?
Yeah, we're having lots of conversations with lots of organisations sort of across the UK. So it's not just it's the basis of 9 trees is there through the subscription service and planting 9 trees each year for each person. But beyond that, we're having conversations with organisations around agroforestry and how we fit in with the food systems in the UK. We're having conversations with large landowners, and we're looking at ways of getting trees planted in sort of the upland areas, which at the moment are quite covered in sort of bracken, which chokes up the hillsides. There's a heavy sort of sheep grazing on those areas, and also there's just very little trees in those sort of parts of the upland within the UK. So we're also looking at how we get those trees planted in those areas, which are difficult to manage and can be really expensive and can be difficult to protect from sort of sheep grazing and deer grazing. Alongside that, we're having conversations with some of the sort of charities that work with flood management and how we can sort of get trees planted along riverside sort of areas and work within sort of flood management stuff. So we're having lots of conversations with lots of people with quite exciting potential for sort of planting further down the line.
Well, that's great. And Mike, so part of what you're doing here is you're keeping people updated. You're planting 9 trees, but the part of, I guess, just the whole thing that you're trying to do is like keep people abreast of what you're doing, that they have sort of a long-standing relationship with you. And so what's that dynamic like? I mean, newsletters, but are people going out and visiting their trees that they helped planted? How does that all work?
Yes, so at the moment our trees are being geolocated to within 10 centimeters, and you'll be able to also gain access to them through What Three Words, which is a big thing in the UK. And so you can visit your 9 trees, and due to restrictions currently in the UK, you may not be able to visit the sites in Wales, but that should be fine in the future, and we'll always keep people updated with the newsletter. There's a separate newsletter for subscribers just to the newsletter, and subscribers who are paying subscribers, because access to the woodlands is only available if you are a paying subscriber. And we ask that people look on the website 2 or 3 days before they're going to visit a site, just in case the landowner has something important to say. Maybe there are certain restrictions either in that area or with cattle, or a family event that might happen. So it's really important that people check on that. So we hope that everyone who signs up really is invested in not just them visiting the site, but also they want to see the trees grow. They want to work as a community with us and the landowner, and we're very communicative via our website comments and things like that. So yeah, we've got also Instagram and Twitter, and accessible on like Facebook Messenger. So yeah, very open.
Well, maybe you could both take a crack at this. We'll start with you, Michelle. But I imagine as you're planting trees and you're greening the United Kingdom, and it starts small, but the more you do, you would imagine that the constituency that supports what you're doing, even if they're not paying to get their 9 trees or anything like that, but like 10, 30 years from now, you've planted X number of trees, it would be kind of hard to probably get, if someone wanted to cut those trees down, even though I know you have these agreements, but you're basically creating a resource that the broader community is probably going to appreciate. And are you kind of seeing that play out in any ways?
This is something that we have talked about a lot in terms of where things will be in sort of 30 years time if we've planted by that point thousands upon thousands of trees. And so by that point we would be a bigger organization. We've got lots of ideas in terms of having the sort of local community maybe involved in those woodlands. If we would look at sort of considering buying up those woodlands and holding them as part of sort of 9 trees, so we can ensure that they stay as sort of a woodland. And I mean, yes, there is a resource within them, but the part with the trees that have been planted at the moment is that those trees have to stay as a woodland. It might be that future woodlands we plant up with a view that they will be part of a community group, and part of a food network or whatever that might be. It's we're not fixed in how we do things. We're open to lots of ideas and suggestions of how we how that moves forward. The main thing is making sure that that the landowner doesn't just go in and sort of take those trees down.
Yeah, I think I'd like to add to that a little bit. We've also talked about the products that you can gain from a woodland, like fencing hurdles or wood for building and firewood and things like that, and how our concerns would be voiced not only just from me and Michelle as directors, but also our team, but also the community of people who own that woodland. And that if you've got 100,000 people who are members, and then a landowner who's going to clear fell, there'll be a lot of voices up against that, and hopefully it would ensure that that woodland doesn't get cut down, or that we can all purchase it, as Michelle was saying. And yeah, in the future we might have a woodland area that is coppiced on rotation, and that is a continuous canopy, or not continuous canopy, so things are felled every now and again and thinned. So there's lots of different options, and we're only in year 2 going into year 3, so we're willing for everyone to get on board and become a subscriber and give us different options, as well as landowners who come to us who have got an idea. We'll work with them on that, and then we just have a separate area on our website, the same as we're doing for uplands, which is you pay not just to subscribe to 9 trees, but maybe you pay for a certain parcel of land to be rewilded, or a certain parcel of land to be a coppice woodland. And so we'll go down that route as and when people feel they want a bespoke service.
Well, guys, we've just blown through this episode really quickly. That this has been great. I guess my last question to both of you, what's next? We've COVID's happening, but I guess next 3 to 6 months, and maybe you both can take a crack out of that. For you guys, what are you going to do?
Well, I'll go first then. So really, this is about creating jobs as well as woodlands for biodiversity and carbon balancing. And we are like opening up for regional reps and getting lots of different people on board. At the moment, we're running about a team of 16 to 20 people volunteering throughout the UK, and we're hoping to create more of the mid to upper level jobs. At the moment, we purely fund the fencing contractors, the tree planters, and like the ecologists and a bit of marketing. So hopefully we'll really expand and be able to do what we say, which is create jobs for people who actually work in the countryside sector.
Awesome. And Michelle, any final thoughts?
Yeah, the other aspect that we're just coming into tree planting season, so that's the other bit that we're focusing on, is getting all the plans drawn up for the planting sites that we've got agreed, and hopefully in amongst sort of the COVID restrictions, we'll work with that and get the trees planted up over the winter. So in sort of 6 months' time, on the website you'll see lots more photos of more trees in the ground.
Excellent. Well, guys, I want to finish this episode out, but I want to take you into just chatting. There's a couple of questions that have come in I'd like to ask you in just chatting, but this is great. And just, it's fantastic work that you're doing. And thanks for coming on Cimpatico.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cheers.
All right, so hold on. We'll be right back. Hey there, we just like to officially close out the episode before that's what we share with you. The episode should be ready hopefully tomorrow, and obviously you've got some social media. Please share on that. A couple of questions I want to get to before I let you guys go. From Islam will ask, how many paying subscribers do you plan to have in a couple of years? How do you plan to involve the youngsters in the planting process? Who wants to crack at that?
We'd love to have 10,000 subscribers in the next couple of years. And we do already have a couple of subscribers from Europe, and we would love some more subscribers from further afield in America. And the youngsters are involved because you can get like a household subscription, and you can start paying for anyone as a gift. Then the youngsters can visit the sites and see their trees growing, and maybe they will grow at the same speed as their tree for a couple of years, but then after that the tree will hopefully shoot up above them, and they've got certificates that they can have a look at and more information on the newsletters. I think as time goes on, we will expand more into like educational side and like site visits, and things like bug hunting and things like that can happen organically in the woodlands as a community of 9 trees comes together. So yeah, looking forward to lots of new and emerging things for youngsters.
Cool. Michelle, did you want to respond to that at all?
I think Mike covered that. Yeah,
Okay.
it's the long term we'll get kids involved a lot more. So yeah.
And Mike asks, and you sort of went toward this at the end of your last answer, but in the episode, I'm curious to know more about the job creation prospects you're creating here. Could you perhaps cultivate an entire generation of forestry professionals with this organizational model and have secure jobs for folks for years to come? So maybe Michelle, you want to?
Yeah, that's a part of the other reason that we got 9 Trees going, is that Mike and I have done a lot of work. That's how we met, was out in managing a woodlands. So what Mike said something to me previously that was, he wants to make 9 Trees an organization that he wished was existing when he left university, and I certainly would have wished the same. There's sort of limited opportunities within the UK to do sort of conservation and woodland management, and so long term, yes, it'd be amazing to have like a whole generation of people that could come out managing woodlands, producing products from it, and having something fully sustainable, because humans are part of the woodland environment. We're not separate from it, and I think a lot of people have lost that connection of what a woodland can produce.
Awesome. Well, let me see. More questions coming. So with COVID though, is it really, you can go out and plant trees though? You just sort of take precautions when you're doing it, but that it hasn't prevented you from like now still planting trees, right?
No, it hasn't currently, due to the Welsh lockdown. It's just held it off a little bit because people need to really take stock of the precautions.
Right.
And everyone's pretty well kitted up with PPE and everything like that, and working at a distance. It's just not sharing cars and things like that as well. And we've got a lot of planning that we can do in the meantime, and lots of organizational and Zoom meetings and such. So yeah, we're hopeful to get the next couple of sites planted up by December, maybe January. And yeah, it should be pretty good going into next year with a lot of sites pinging up on the map who want trees. Brilliant.
I did an interview not too long ago with Jad Daly. He's the CEO of American Forests, and they're starting this whole Trillion Trees initiative. I guess I think it was an international program. I mean, obviously he's kind of taking it from the United States perspective, but yeah, that's just another one of the things you hear about and you can plug into, because they want to probably log every tree that's put in the ground. A trillion is a lot of trees.
Yeah, this is it. I think me and Michelle also started this because there's been a lot of talk about the environment and climate change for 30, 40 years, and people still like talking and doing research and analysis and planning big projects. And it's the people who are actually on the ground or running the smaller organizations that are getting the money and planting trees. We've had a few organizers come to us and said, we've done this 5-year project about planting trees and we know where all the trees should go, but we haven't got any money. So now we've got to raise money from subscribers and plant the trees with them, which is great opportunity. And 1 trillion trees is a wonderful international thing, and to plant 1 trillion trees on the land that is available is a real surge that we need, from the top down. Like it's been started by one guy, but he's got into every government structure, and it's really important to have that, and we can feed into that. But we want to make sure that people understand that we can do this from us as the organisers and a landowner who's altruistic and a community of people all paying. We don't get grant funding, we don't get government funding. We do it all right now as soon as possible.
Well, Michelle, I'm curious, like when you're having these conversations, like we talked earlier about the ecological considerations, like tree selection that you're going to plant in certain areas, and there's things that are happening in the United States. They're modeling out what trees are going to survive in certain areas, like a maple tree, famous in New Hampshire, Vermont. Get your maple trees, and now with some of the models saying that those trees are going to migrate north, does that factor in at all in tree plantings? Like, are you getting that sort of, this, even though this is supposed to be here for the next 50 years, 100 years, it's not likely to be here?
No, we are getting that. It's when we're looking at planting sites in Wales compared to the sort of southeast of England, there is a huge difference in terms of the climate and what's happening in how it's impacting already in the southeast of England. So it's a much more of a Mediterranean climate, and there's trees surviving there that wouldn't normally survive within the UK, whereas in Wales we've got a much wetter environment and the tree selection is completely different. So we do look at, there's a lot of research on sort of what trees are surviving where, and whether we need to consider introducing slightly different species into the mix, because long term some of those trees that we would normally plant aren't going to be there in 50 years time, because of, like you were saying with the maple tree, the migration sort of north in terms of its needs.
Brave new world, right?
Yeah.
Well, guys, I'm going to let you go. This has been fantastic. Like I said, we should have this available to you relatively soon, and maybe there's a follow-up conversation we could have. We've maybe somehow work it out. We visit a site and saying, look at some of the trees that we're planting. We don't do that many on location, but that could be kind of fun. But thanks again for coming on. This has been a lot of fun talking with you guys and seeing what you're up to.
Yeah, it was really great. Thank you.
Thank you very much for hosting us, and thanks for the questions, everyone. And if you've got any more questions, just pop them over to the website. Thanks.
Awesome. And we'll have all that information on the episode wall so people can follow up pretty quickly. All right. Well, you guys can just sign us StreamYard, but thanks again.
Thanks. See you, Doug.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.
All right, folks, I am going to take a quick break because I have another episode coming right up with Dr. Ruth DeFries and from the Columbia University. And looking forward to that conversation. That was really cool what they're doing at 9 trees. And I love the whole notion of 9 tons of carbon. And you need to plant 9 trees and keep planting 9 trees. And so even if they reduce their carbon footprint, it's only 7 tons per person. Keep at it. You're going to need that, accelerate that. So I will be back soon enough.